Just real quick before we begin, I want to thank everyone for joining us for this evening's event. My name's Emily. I'm one of the event hosts here at Powell's, and I just want to encourage you to check out our lineup of upcoming virtual events by visiting our website at powells.com. And if you don't already, please consider following us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Tonight, we're so very excited to welcome Renée Watson and Nicola Yoon. Renée Watson is a New York Times bestselling author. Her novel Piecing Me Together received a Newbery Honor and Coretta Scott King Award. Her books include Ways to Make Sunshine, Some Places More Than Others, This Side of Home, What Mama Left Me, Betty Before X, Watch Us Rise, as well as two acclaimed picture books, A Place Where Hurricanes Happen and Harlem's Little Blackbird, which was nominated for an NAACP Image Award. Watson's new book, Love is a Revolution, is a love story, not only about romantic love, but about how a girl finds and falls in love with who she really is. When Nala Robertson reluctantly agrees to attend an open mic night for her cousin's sister friend Imani's birthday, she finds herself falling in instant love with Tye Brown, the MC. He's perfect, except Tye is an activist and is spending the summer putting on events for the community, when Nyla would rather watch movies and try out the new seasonal flavors at the local creamery. In order to press Tye, Nyla tells a few tiny lies to have enough in common with him. As they spend more time together, sharing more of themselves, some of those lies will get harder to keep up. As Nyla falls deeper into keeping up her lives and into love, she'll learn all the ways love is hard and how self-love is revolutionary. In Love is a Revolution, plus-size girls are beautiful and get the attention of the hot guys. The popular girl clique is not shallow, but has strong convictions and substance. And the ultimate love story is not only about romance, but about how to show radical love to the people in your life, including yourself. Joining Watson in conversation this evening is Nicola Yoon. Yoon is the best-selling author of Everything Everything, and The Sun is also a star. She's a National Book Award finalist, a Michael L. Prince Honor Book recipient, and a Coretta Scott King New Talent Award winner. Both of her novels have been made into major motion pictures. So this event also includes author Q&A. Please do use the author Q&A button at the bottom of your screen if you would like to ask a question. As well, if someone has typed a question you would already like to know the answer to, please upvote that particular question by clicking the thumbs up button. Perhaps most importantly, please consider supporting Renee and Powell's by purchasing a copy of her new book from us. We'll be sharing a link to buy Love is a Revolution, as well as Nicola's books in the chat a couple of times this evening. Renee, Nicola, it's such a pleasure to welcome you. Thank you both so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Thank you, and thanks for the awesome introduction. Renee, I'm so happy to see you.
I am so happy to see you too. I'm so happy to see you. Thanks for joining me tonight and being in conversation with me.
It is a pleasure. This beautiful, beautiful book. You know, you guys, if you don't have it yet, now is a good time to hit the button to buy it. I was gonna start by maybe just reading the blurb I wrote for this, and then I'm gonna ask you questions, Renee, and then we can just chit chat. Does that sound awesome? But you are
Sounds
muted.
perfect. Yeah, I muted myself because there's noise in the background. But yes, that sounds good.
Okay. All right. So in Love is a Revolution, Watson takes us on Nala's journey to claim her right to decide who she wants to be in a world that so often tries to fit Black girls into metaphorical boxes. It is deftly crafted, big-hearted, beautiful, funny, honest, and inspiring. I really love this book, if you cannot tell from that quote.
Thank you.
So I'm going to start with, for people in the audience who haven't read this yet, give us the sort of big picture pitch for Love is a Revolution.
So, Love is a Revolution is about a girl named Nala. She lives in Harlem. She's Jamaican American, and she reluctantly goes to an open mic night, a talent show of sorts, and she falls for an activist guy. He's also a teenager, and he's spending his summer volunteering. And she tells a few lies to impress him, and those lies include
He's
that
a
he is
hot.
he's very hot, like he's fine, as what I would say in high school. He is so fine. And he's also really thoughtful. So like she immediately falls for him by watching him interact with his peers that night. And so she pretends she's acting like an activist and saying that she volunteers. And those lives kind of get out of hand. And so she has to kind of pull back and realize that if she's going to love him, she has to first love herself. So it is a love story. There's kissing and there's romance and there's dates, but it's also about her loving herself.
Right. Okay.
And can I just say that blurb, listen, when when you sent that in and I read it, I almost cried. I respect your work. I love you. So to have you love the book so much meant so much to me. So thank you for such a thoughtful blurb. It was really beautiful.
Well, I mean, it was my pleasure, right? I mean, you know this too, Renee. You get asked to read so many things and blurb it, and like, not everything is like awesome. It's just how the world is. And so when you find something that's just really beautiful and wonderful, it's easy. Then it's just like, I will write all the words for this, you know. Okay, so tell me about the inspiration for the book.
I think I started writing this right after finishing Watch Us Rise, which is almost in every way the opposite of who Nala is. The two girls that are the protagonists in that book, which I co-wrote with Ellen Hagen. So it goes back and forth between a girl named Jasmine, who I wrote, and Chelsea, who Ellen wrote. And they are already very bold and brave. They know who they are. They are committed to activism. They're standing up. They're feminists. They're, these budding activist girls who are making change in their school. And I jokingly was like, what are the girls in the school who are not like that? Like, I wonder how they're feeling watching Jasmine and Chelsea be so amazing and making speeches and holding rallies and all that kind of stuff. And I thought about a girl like Nala. I know Nala very well, as far as like, I know girls like her who care, about their community, but are maybe just not as outward with showing it. And I wanted to explore all the ways in which you can show up for your community and for your people that might not be the traditional like rally, protest, make a speech kind of way. So those were the first kind of inklings of the story. And then, I wanted to write something about love and something that was fun and lighthearted, but I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean, like, I usually tackle serious social issues, and I also wanted to create a book where Black teens can also just exist and Blackness not be a burden or a struggle, where they just get to have a fun, loving summer. And so all of that was kind of in my mind when I went to the page.
Yeah, I think one of the things I really appreciated about Nala too was the fact that she did not know how she wanted to show up, right? Right, was the fact that there are different ways to show up, and I think that's one of the things that sometimes gets lost, right? Like what if you're just shy and retiring, right? You can show up in ways that are not public and not so sort of everyone can give you points for, for doing the thing. And you don't want to get on stage, but maybe you donate, maybe you volunteer, and those are all okay.
And they're necessary, right?
Right.
Like we need all of that
right.
to be a part of the movement for sure.
Yeah, I agree with that. So some of the bigger themes that you're exploring in the book is, one of the things I always talk about is how America is so good at putting Black girls into boxes, right? Like it's so good at saying who we are supposed to be and what we're supposed to sound like and how you should wear your hair and what you should do. And like, it's just endless. Like the box gets very, very, very tiny sometimes.
Yeah.
And I think one of the themes that you're exploring this is like, what does it mean to be a girl, especially a Black girl in America, and like what kinds of things you need to push against and how much you need to know yourself. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I wanted to also, I think this kind of happened on its own just because, I believe this and live this way. So it just comes up in my writing. Blackness is nuanced and there are many ways to be Black. There's no one way to be a Black girl. So her cousin, Imani, is she wears her hair natural and she's into activism in the way that I think when we hear that word, that she's more like that. She's going to the protest, she's leading events and making speeches and whatnot. And Nala does all kinds of things with her hair, and she wears makeup and she's into fashion, and she isn't showing up in the world the way that even her cousin wants her to show up. And she loves her body. They're both plus size girls. And I wanted them both to come to the page already intact with their self esteem and not broken and not trying to like fix themselves because they think that, you know, they're not beautiful. They show up already whole in that way. And so I wanted Nala to have things to work on that weren't the things that we sometimes put on big girls or Black girls to work on, right? She is not dealing with any big family struggle, even. She doesn't live with her mom, but she has a relationship with her mother, and there's no backstory of tragedy or, you know, intense drama there either. I just wanted her to come to the page whole, but still very much 17.
Right.
And sometimes I don't think our girls get to be 17, 16, 15. We put so much pressure on them to already come acting like women and having to be mature and know all the answers and be quiet, and you know, there's all these labels we want to put on them. And I just wanted her to have fun and be whoever she is going to be, and maybe some of that she doesn't know yet, and that's okay.
Right.
Does that
I
make
mean,
sense?
yeah, no, it absolutely makes sense. I mean, and we've had conversations like this before where I just feel like in media, we Black girls especially aren't allowed like the breadth of their humanity, right?
Yeah.
You can be anything. That's it, right? Like that should not be a revolutionary thing. I
Right.
remember, right? Like that statement is like pretty basic. Um, when I wrote my second book, The Sun Is Also a Star, the main character, one of the main characters, her name was Natasha, and she's this like scientific girl, right? She's very practical. She loves physics. She's the science major. I was an electrical engineering major. Do you know how many times people said to me, "Oh, she's so different," and I'm just like, "No, she is not. I
Oh,
know these girls. I went to school with them. They are my friends." And
yeah.
problem is that we don't see them in media, right? Like everyone exists, but we only
Yes.
see a small sort of segment, which is fine. But I just want to expand it. Let's just show everyone, right?
Yeah, and let our girls be in love, which is why, you know, I love your work so much, is because we are also getting to see Black girls be tender and be desired and be cherished. And I think that that's also important. A lot of times, they don't get to, they're their own heroes too. I think you write characters who are not damsels in distress, but that are strong girls who are coming to the page with something to offer, not only with the areas of growth. And I think there can be both. And I don't know that we give grace to Black girls to grow or give them permission to love.
Yeah.
And I think that is so important. And I see it all, like you said, I know these girls who are um, singing songs and you know, being playful and not being surprised that they are worthy of love. You know,
Right.
because sometimes when some of the stories we'll write or I'll see will be like the girl who gets the guy is also so taken by him that she can't believe that someone like her could get this guy. You're just like, seriously, you know. So I wanted Tye, even I wanted that relationship to not be a surprise to her that he likes her. I mean, you know, she's a little insecure, but it's not for the things that you would think a girl like Nala would be insecure about.
Right.
And she has relationships with Black men in her life that are healthy. And so when she meets Tye, he's not some like exception to a rule that he's the only guy that's ever treated her so kind. She has her uncle and JT and all, you know, men in the community who are good stand-up guys and who have healthy relationships with Black women. So I wanted that to be in the novel too, of just like he's an addition to her already beautiful story. He
Right.
doesn't come and then makes her story beautiful.
Right. I want to just go back to one thing you said before is that, one of the things about falling in love books, or that's important to me, and I think it's important to you too, is that like part of falling in love is learning to love yourself, right? Like you
Mhm.
have to, otherwise it's no good. You have to actually really like yourself.
Yes.
That doesn't work. And I feel like that's one of the things Nala has to go through in the book. You want to talk about that a little bit? Talk about what you mean when you say radical self-love.
Sure. So in that moment, I think her grandmother says to her, and to Imani, the most radical thing you can do is love yourself and each other, because they're in the middle of this really heated argument, and it's kind of like the all things fall apart moment in the book. And I think for anyone, but especially as we're talking about young Black girls, to love yourself in a world that constantly tells you you're not good enough, that your skin tone is the wrong tone, that your hair texture is the wrong texture, your body is the wrong size, your zip code is the wrong zip code, all of that, right? To say I'm beautiful and I'm of value and I'm worthy and my life matters is a radical thing. And the revolution, the shifting of turning, and saying I'm going to wholeheartedly believe this and change the narrative of my life, is what Nala is kind of going for. That's her way of being an activist. First is to herself and caring for herself. So that's kind of what I was thinking about. These girls showing up in the world, in a world that is complicated and is not always welcoming, and how are they going to claim space and be who they are no matter where they are. Nala is all over the city of New York, and she is free. And I love that she just, exists in her body and in her skin without apology. And so I think that's what I was trying to get at with the grandmother saying that. And
Yeah.
then the loving each other, right? That it's
Right.
also, love is so complicated and hard to do. It requires patience and critique and self discipline and listening and patience, all those things, right? Kindness, thoughtfulness. It's very hard to love someone, especially someone who's imperfect. And so both Nala and Imani, Nala and her mother, they're learning, how do I love you even though sometimes you aren't worthy of my love? Like, you do things that hurt my feelings. And this kind of, someone hurts your feelings, let them out your life and just keep it moving. How do we help young people say, well, wait a minute now, some people are worth fighting for? Like, yeah, some people you got to let go of, but some people you really need to, like, be in it with them and practice love. So I was also thinking about that. The loving yourself is super hard, but also true love of each other is just as hard too. It's not an easy thing to do.
Right. I think one of the things I love so much about your book too is not just the romantic love, like you're saying, it's her mother, it's Imani, it's just, you have to love everyone. Like we don't exist like these like just one person, right?
Yeah, on an island.
Yeah, on an island. Yeah, exactly. Um, the thing that I always sort of feel that makes me crazy sometimes is when people talk about romance books, and they like sort of denigrate them in a way, that's just the romance
Yes,
novel. Right? And I will say this until like I die, but love is the thing that makes the world go round, right? That's
it
it.
is.
It's the thing that everyone wants. Everyone will do anything to get anytime, right? Like, and that's good and bad, right? I mean, people do terrible things in the name of love, but
Mhm.
love is the force, right? Like all of it, like love of your work and the love of your friends and your family and that romantic partner. And
And your community,
yes,
like when we think about loving our nation, like all the things, the things that are worth fighting for, right? Like that's what I love. If I don't love it or that person or that place, and I'm not going to fight for it. So I think even as a people, when I think about, yeah, loving this country as a Black woman, what does that mean? Like, and yeah, love does make the world go round. And that is exactly why I think we're, doing this work, love of young people, wanting to put stories out there for them. So much is fueled by love, and it is not a light thing. So yeah, that bothers
not
me so much when people
insane.
downplay love stories,
Yeah,
and children's lit in general. I mean, as if,
yeah.
like, what I think, to be invited into a young person's space and have that, it's very intimate to say, I have a story to tell you, and I hope
Mhm,
you see yourself in the story,
mhm.
and I want you to think about your world and how does it relate to the characters in this world. Like, it's a very powerful exchange that we get to have with young people, and it's not a small thing. They're going to be our leaders and our teachers and our politicians one day. So I feel really honored that we, get to plant seeds, and then with all these loving teachers, parents, and other folks in their lives that water them and help them grow. So none of it is little. It's all a big deal.
Right.
And I think
Renee, you just give
all
me
stories
chills.
matter. What'd
Yeah.
you say?
You just give me chills. I love the way you said that. That's one of the questions I get all the time too. And why write for young people? And I'm like, it's a privilege. And
Yeah.
you understand, like they're so open to the world in a way that sometimes adults are not, right? I mean,
Yes.
young people are like naturally philosophical. They're naturally asking the big questions because they're young, right?
Yes.
They want to know the meaning of life and do I believe in God and what does the world mean and like who do I want to be in it? And to be part of that conversation with them is just, to be the person that's saying, well, look at this over here and look at this idea or this philosophy over here. And we get to like, you get to introduce them, you get to sort of, maybe shape it a little bit, or at least show them that there are questions to be asked. That's
Yeah.
amazing. Right?
And I think too, to show them that they're not the only ones with those questions, right? We're
Right.
writing characters who have big questions or who aren't perfect and who are making mistakes and who are figuring out the messiness of existing. And I think it can be comforting to like, oh, this character is going through that. I'm not alone, or I'm not the only one. There's nothing wrong with me for feeling this way or thinking
Right.
that way.
Yeah.
I think is a powerful thing too. Yeah.
All right. I'm going to go back to some of these questions.
Okay.
But pivot a little bit because I don't want to give away spoilers for the book, but let's talk about the young adult category. And so diversity in children's literature has been a topic in YA spaces for 1,000 years now.
Yes.
And I guess my question is, do you think the conversation has been productive? And how do we get to a point when there is no longer a need for these discussions?
Ooh.
That's a small question.
I do think it's been productive. I mean, I can look, my first book came out in 2010, and I can look back, so what, almost 11 years ago, and see a change in publishing. Just the fact, even my covers, and looking at the fact that a dark skinned Black girl with braids or with, can exist on the cover like that, but front and center, that's a big deal. That has not always been the case. So I definitely see, growth and change. And I'm able to have conversations with my publishing team that I couldn't have had 10 years ago. So, yes, and there's
Yeah.
so much more work to do, right? And I don't know that I think that might always be the answer. And I'm not trying to sound like a hopeless, but I just, in knowing history and looking at the way the world works, you are always taking a few steps forward, a few steps back. There's always the trailblazers that come and people who come and kind of um, there's a movement and a lot of progress gets made, and then there's pushback to that movement, and then you have to kind of not start over but get re-energized to do the next part of that work. And that's just been what our country is, so I don't expect that to change. I think the strides we have made are beautiful and great and amazing, but we need so much more of them that sometimes I'm almost afraid to even acknowledge those things because I don't want people to get happy and complacent, right? And they like pat yourself on the back because there's a Black girl on the cover. Like that really shouldn't be the marker of, oh, we've come a long way, So at the same time, while I'm grateful, I also know that Black women need to be paid more in publishing. We need the gatekeepers like agents, editors, book designers, all of those, positions. We need more people of color in those positions. So there's so much that we have to do. But I'm also in it for the marathon of it too. And I just know that it's not going to be an easy fix. So yeah, I can pause and celebrate these wins. You and your imprint, like that's a game changer. Like that is, I almost cried. I was just like, this is fruit of those conversations. The fact that and I want you, please talk about it before we go. So I look at that, I'm like, okay, this is amazing. And yes, these conversations are now leading to action. But I want to see you thriving 10 years from now and 20 years from now And that's when I think we can see, oh, okay, those conversations really had lasting harvest.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, absolutely makes sense. And I can feel that you're sort of underlying, sort of, it's not fear exactly, but I remember when I first got to America, and I remember there were so many shows with Black people on TV. I remember that, like, because I came from Jamaica, we had one channel, it was like the BBC, and we thought there was nothing. And then I came here and I was like, what? And then it went away, right?
Yes.
These things go in waves, and there is like, my husband and I talk about this all the time. Like, it's like sometimes it feels like a trend. It's like people get interested for a little while,
Yes.
and then it goes away. But people are not trends, right? And we exist because we exist, right? That's it. There is nothing
That's
else.
it. Yeah.
And so I do feel that that's sort of like, is this a moment that's going to last, or what's happening with us,
Mm.
as a nation? And it's hard to say. I do think the conversations have been productive. I think they're really painful sometimes. Sometimes they're really ridiculous. Honestly, it's just like,
Yes.
what? It's like, please, I didn't turn off Twitter now, right?
Oh
Um,
yeah. Well,
yeah,
those aren't real conversations to
no,
me.
they're
So
not.
yeah. Social
There's
media
so-
conversations are not, I'm talking about the actual, sitting down with people and really hashing it out and talking about things.
yeah,
Yeah.
and that's one of the things that I think has to change too. Is like this, there's so much fear to talking about things. It's like people don't want to talk about race, and like, it's the same way people whisper back when they're describing someone across. You're like, it's a description. There's no whispering necessary, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like the conversations exist in that kind of space where it's just like, and, I think if we allow each other some grace, we can just talk, right? If we think that no one's out to get you, although some people are, but most people are not, right? Most people
Right.
do the right thing if they know what the right thing is, I think.
I do
Um,
too.
yeah,
Yeah. I do think I am learning that more and more, that sometimes it's just lack of knowledge, right? And experience with other people. And so even in thinking about marketing and how books are marketed to readers, and thinking about how publishing is set up, sometimes by default, the Black community is left out of the marketing plan just because we're not always thinking about school districts that maybe can't make the school and library functions that our industry kind of counts on or markets to, and pitches us for conferences and things like that, right? So I think about all of the on the ground, like thinking of, and I've been in education before, so I know that a lot of schools are not able to send teachers to conferences. So if a
right.
publisher's focus is sending authors to those conferences, then we are leaving out so many young people and so many teachers
Yeah,
who don't know about our work because they're not being, spoken to. So how do we balance it and make sure that the people who we're writing for actually know about us and have access? Like something like that is also a part of the oral. I think it's becoming a part of the conversation, but it hasn't always been.
yes,
And so I'm thinking about it that way too, and book covers and paying people what they're worth. All of those things need to be happening. So that's why I say we have a lot of work to do.
yeah, I agree with you completely. Um, okay, so let's talk about history. What was the first book you saw yourself in when you were a kid?
The first book, it was a long time before I saw myself in a book, like a novel. I saw myself in poetry first. So the
Mm,
poetry of Maya Angelou, Nikki Giovanni, Langston Hughes. I always talk about how reading poems as a kid is what made me love words and love literature, and feel like, oh, there are people who are writing about me. I know these people. They sound like my grandma and the women at my church and my neighborhood. So I loved poetry. I used to recite it a lot in elementary and middle school at school assemblies or at church. And then I don't know when it was that I read House on Mango Street, but that book was like, what? It was like poetry and prose and
yeah,
these chapters that could be pulled out and almost be like short stories. It was just a brilliant book to me. So I love Sandra Cisneros, and then started reading more novels after that. I mean, I also read, being a Portland girl, I read the Ramona series when I was younger, and I loved that series for many reasons. But as far as seeing myself in it, I related to Ramona because she was a girl from Portland, Oregon, and I knew those streets and I knew the park that she was playing at and the library she went to, but I didn't see brown people in that book or in that series. So yeah, it was poetry for me. What
Yeah, and
about you? I'm so curious of what you grew up reading.
so I mean, the first book I saw a girl that looked like me in was The Bluest by Toni Morrison, right? And I always talk about this, and I remember being so surprised that you could do that. Like a black girl could star in the book. Like it's about her, it's for her. She
Mm,
has agency. I remember genuinely being, wait, what? You could do this? Um, and
wow.
and it changed everything for me. And I think we once talked about the Toni Morrison, one of the Toni Morrison quotes, which was, the very real function of racism is distraction, right?
Yeah.
And that was another thing that really shaped me. Like just knowing, I heard that when I was pretty young, and it made a difference to me. Just that you could have a life where you do not think about what white people think about you. And
Yeah.
Toni Morrison is like that. Like it does not occur to me to think about it. And I don't know why, but I've always been like that. I mean, part of it is growing up in Jamaica, part of it is just being a stubborn person. uh, but I just don't like I demand to get to exist. I demand my joy. I will
Mm.
not see anyone else. Um, but Toni Morrison taught me that.
Were you writing as a child too? Like when you wrote stories, were they black characters? How were you being a
You know,
creative person?
it's funny because I found an old diary a few years ago when I was 8. I said I want to be a writer when I grow up, but I forgot until college. And in college, I did not write stories with black girls or black characters in them. I wrote mostly like old white guys, which is just,
Really?
it was bizarre. It was like these old professors like on New England college campuses. I mean, go figure. I did that until grad school, and I was like, wait, why am I doing this? Like, I just didn't.
Mm.
And then grad school, I majored in creative writing, and then I got my act together. But I don't
Um,
know.
Did you write as a child, like when you were elementary age?
No, not really. Not really. I mostly drew poorly. I wrote a lot of bad poetry younger, but that's it. All right. I'm gonna switch gears again to writing.
Okay.
And then let me see the time. We have a lot of questions. So I'm gonna ask you, we have 13 questions in the Q&A. I'm gonna ask you a few more questions and then we'll open it up. Does that
Okay.
sound, yeah? Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so do you want to tell me a little bit about your writing process for, especially the writers in our audience?
I usually start off by making lists. I don't ever just start writing. I do a lot of thinking and brainstorming. Um, with Love is a Revolution, some of the things I like my list was I want to make sure Nala goes to these places in Harlem. And so I wrote
Hmm.
Sugar Hill Creamery, which is a real, place, and the Schomburg Center, the other things that she's gonna walk by and see and things like that. Um, and scenes. Like I'll have ideas that there needs to be a date at the Hudson River. I'm gonna make sure they go roller skating. Like I'll just kind of not in any order, but just these things need to happen in this book at some point.
Yeah.
And I do that because on those really bad writing days when it's just not coming, I go to that list and I can just pick something off of the list and write a scene,
Mm.
and it gets me, started and unstuck when I'm stuck. So sometimes that list, some of those things don't even make the novel, but it's just helpful for me to know that I have something to go to if I need it when I am writing. And some of it comes naturally, and it's just in my head so that it comes to the page. So I'm not necessarily sitting with the list next to me saying, okay, check, I did that, I did that. It's just more so my mind can think of all the possibilities that could happen for the character. And I kind of know right away, like who does my character love, who loves them back, what's in the way of what they want. Like I kind of interview her and just get the essence of who she is. What is she afraid of? You know, who makes her nervous? All those
Mhm.
kinds of things. And that helps me build out tension and scenes. And then I start the actual writing. And
And
I
do you
usually I
like,
handwrite for I'm not you like you are masterful. I don't know how you do that. I handwrite the beginning of every story. But
Mhm.
after I get like when I feel like okay, I really have something, then I switch over and I start typing it out. But you handwrite all of your
I
like the whole novel.
I
I,
am
I
ridiculous.
can't believe you do that.
Yeah, I mean, I have tried to change it. So I handwrite into like moleskin notebooks, right? So,
Yeah, I've seen
uh,
them.
right, yeah. And so I just do the first draft is in those notebooks. And it makes me feel free to handwrite. Like I just won't edit myself. I turn off that internal editor,
Yeah,
and let myself just have those strange ideas. Where when I get on the computer, I'm a little bit more, it's good for revision for me because I will throw out my darlings in that,
mm,
like it's like more serious when I'm typing. But I definitely feel like a little bit wilder when I'm in my notebooks, and so I just stick to it. And I tried
yeah.
changing it once, and it did not go well. Like,
I always I'm more I definitely feel more honest as a writer when I'm handwriting.
yeah,
And it's just there's an intimacy with pen to paper for me.
yes,
Um so when I am stuck, like as I'm typing, if I'm in the thick of it on a first draft and it's just not working, sometimes I'll go back to handwriting and it almost immediately I'll have a breakthrough. I don't know why that is. It may if it's because that's how I learned how to write and I
yes,
told stories that
yeah,
way as a kid,
yeah,
handwriting them out. I don't know, but yeah, there's some. I have so many journals,
yeah.
and journals full of poetry and all of that kind of stuff. So handwriting is my go-to to start anything.
I think what you said before might be really true. It's like because I remember those penmanship lessons back in Jamaica in school, and I think it's because maybe it's the first thing. Like I remember learning how to write and
Hmm.
like practicing my cursive and all that. Yeah.
Me too. Not
Although
in
I
Jamaica, but
first,
yeah, I remember those handwriting courses.
yeah. All right, let me see. Let me just check the time. Okay, maybe one or two more. Have you always wanted to be a writer? And if you weren't writing, what would you be doing?
So I've always been a writer and I've always wanted to be a writer, but I didn't know I could be an author.
Right.
So I tell this story all the time. So sorry, folks, for
Tell,
who heard me
tell
speak
us again.
before, but I wrote a 21-page story when I was in the second grade. And yes, 21. Speaking of handwriting, like that, I love the teacher who was like, I'm going to read 21 pages from a second grader. Um, and she told me, she's like, I think you're going to be a writer one day. And she encouraged me to get journals. I've always been a writer. In middle school, I wrote a play. It became the spring production that my school put
Wow.
on, so I've always been a writer and just knew that I would be doing that. In my early 20s would do spoken word, poetry, slams, and put on little one-woman shows or really small one-act plays. But it never dawned on me that I could do this for a living, that I could have a career and actually make a living as a writer until I was in college. And not because I didn't know it was a career, but just I didn't know that I could do it. And it was a professor really who pushed me and said, you need to get an agent. Like, what are you doing? And pushed me to pursue writing. So yes, I've always known, but I didn't know that it could be my career. So
Wow.
if I wasn't a writer, I'd probably be a teacher. But when I was a kid, I wanted to be Claire Huxtable. I grew up wanting to be a
Look
lawyer
at
just
that.
because of
Yeah.
Felicia Rashad. And then I realized how long you have to go to school to be a lawyer and what it all entails. Like, okay, never mind, never mind.
I'm
But I
glad.
really wanted to be Claire Huxtable. Like,
Yeah.
she's so
Oh my
fly.
God. That was one of the first shows I saw when I got to America from Jamaica. And I was like, what is this show? It was unbelievable. Like
It was
it's so cute.
unbelievable.
Yeah. Um, I think I would be like I would get paid to travel around and like review hotels.
Oh, nice. That's a
I
good job.
love traveling. I mean, one of the hardest parts of there's so many hard parts of the pandemic, but I miss, going on adventures.
Mm.
My people, like just going to a new country and learning all of that. We like to go for a long time and really get local and just learn everything.
Mhm.
It's that. So I would do
For
that
sure.
and write about it.
Yes.
All right, and then how about some advice for writers just starting out, and then we'll take some Q&A.
Oh, my advice for writers, aspiring writers, you said?
Yeah,
We always read,
yeah,
read. And I say, when you find something that you love, read it again. Like, go back and really think about, what did this writer do to make me love this book so much? Why did I keep turning the page? And I think that's your master class. Like, yes, you can take writing workshops, but really digging into what you love and figuring out what you love about an author and what they're doing can inform your own work. So I always encourage aspiring writers to read a lot and then go back and really study that book. And then my real non-writerly advice is to find your people. You don't need a whole lot, but you are going to need 2 or 3 friends who are going to push you and encourage you and let you lean on them, because writing is isolating and it's hard, and there are so many reasons not to do it. But if you feel called to do it, then you should. But you're just going to need to have people in your life who are going to encourage you to do that. So make sure you have some support so that you can weather all the ups and downs of writing in a writing career.
yes. I thank God that David is also a writer, because he knows my husband, he sees me going around the house in tears, going, "This is the worst thing anyone's ever written." And he's just like, "No, honey, it's okay." And I'm like, "No, you don't understand."
I
But
loved your tweet today about the review that you got for your new book. I want to show it. That's coming
mm,
out, this
yeah,
amazingness.
yeah,
And you got a star review today. That's
I
amazing. And
did.
so
I
your tweet was saying that you were dancing around and
literally
happy.
did. I was at breakfast and I was like reading email, and the email came in, and I got up and did a boogie around the house.
I love it.
David and my
Love it.
little chased me around the house going, "What is going on?" I was like, "A star, I got a star."
Yeah, you got to celebrate every little thing that happens for each book. So,
Yeah,
yeah, having people in your life who will be there for those tiny celebrations and for the big ones and everything in between
yeah,
is important.
yeah. All right, I am going to look at the Q&A. Okay, so this one is from Amoy Lyons. "I love both your books. I just finished Love is a Revolution. Any advice for writers who have trouble with plotting a contemporary romance novel?"
Hmm. I feel like you should answer this. You're the queen of contemporary romance novels.
I mean, I think it's like plotting anything. It's
True.
the first draft. I say this a million times. I'm going to say a million more. The first draft sucks. It just,
Always.
right? It is you telling the story to yourself. It's miserable. Just deal with it. Right? Just, and the other thing is, part of writing is doubt. Like, doubt is part of the process. And
Mm,
that's something I've had a hard time coming to terms with. But I start off really strong, and then I get to the ocean of the middle, and I doubt everything,
yes.
right? You doubt the reason you started the project, you doubt that you were
Yes.
good writer to do the project.
Yes.
Um, you doubt that it matters at all anyway, because God, the world is on fire, right? And it always is. Um, but you got to get through, just get through to the end. And it doesn't have to make that much sense. And it's a messy thing, but then you have a thing you can fix. And I always say I only have a career because I am good at revising, not because I'm good at first drafting, because I am not. I hate it. I think it's miserable. But I can revise the crap out of something.
Yes.
You
Yeah,
know,
I totally agree. I mean, everything you said, amen to that.
okay, let me find another one. Let's see. I love both your books. I've read them over and over. This is from Maria Schneider, and I always learn so much. Do you have any other books coming out? Renee, do you have any other books coming out
I
soon?
do. Next month, actually, April 27th, the second book of the Ryan Hart series comes out. So Book one came out last spring, Ways to Make Sunshine. And
Yeah.
this book is Ways to Grow Love, and it will be out next month.
Do you
So
have
it's early middle grade.
do you have like do you have an arc or anything close
I
by that
think, let me see. I think I do. Keep talking. Talk about your new book, and I'll look to see if I
oh
have one nearby.
so yeah, my new book is called Instructions for Dancing. And I don't know, the glare, I don't have an arc yet, so you can't really see the cover. um, but it's about a girl named Evie who gets the ability to see how relationships go. So she sees a couple kiss, she sees the beginning of the relationship and all these sort of highlights, and then she sees the end of the relationship. And what she notices is that all relationships end. And so she's, very cynical, very skeptical of love. And then there's the hot rock star boy that comes into her life. His name is Xavier. He plays rock and roll. He does not believe in her nonsense. And she has to decide, is love worth all the risk? So that's what it's about. All right, let me see your book.
I can't find, I don't have one near me, and I don't
Oh.
want to have to get up and walk around, but it is a continuation of the Ryan Hart story, which is Ramona-esque and kind of my love letter to Portland. I have critiqued Portland a lot in This Side of Home and Piecing Me Together. And so in this book, you get to see all the things that I really love about Portland. And Ryan is exploring, and in ways to grow love, she's learning how love you have to put something in to get something out, right? So she's excited about her baby sister. She's learning new things about how to be a good friend and getting over her own shyness around speaking in public and performing in public. There's more shenanigans with her brother and all good stuff with her. So yeah, I'm excited about it, and it'll be out next month.
Awesome. All right, so Amoy lines another question. I found that some of my favorite scenes involve Nala being surrounded by all of the elders and her grandmother's friends. Can you talk to me more about those scenes?
I just grew up in an intergenerational family community. There was just no such thing as kid only or adults only. We would have dinner together. We would go places together. We'd have church together. And so I wanted to just show that kind of family on the page, that the younger folks are liking to hang out with the older folks, and that there's wisdom being shared. I was so loved and nurtured by the older women in my life, and sitting on the porch playing my little game while my aunt and my mother were talking, and just being in earshot of them. The women at my church cooking in the basement after church for fellowship service. Those were just precious moments. And I think is a very crucial part of the Black community, is that the elders are always looking out for the younger people. And so that's kind of where that came from. And Nala needed somebody to help her out and help her grow. And so it came by way of her grandmother and her friends. And I wanted there to be a love story for that generation as well. There's a little love thing going on with grandma and her friend JT.
So great.
So I just wanted to show that too, because I've seen that also.
It's funny because I think, especially around the presidential election, there's so much ageism in America.
Yeah.
And we're talking about, listen, these people have experience. They have been around a while. Like, we should be, that's amazing. But you have someone you could go ask who's been through the thing you're going through five times over.
Exactly.
Like, how are we not seeing that as a strength? I find that baffling.
Yeah, me too. So yeah, I just wanted them to shine in this book, because I love my elders and would not be here if it weren't for them.
Right. Okay, let's see. Let me just scroll a little bit. How do we help advocate for female writers being paid more? From Raina Evans. Raina. How do we, it's the same everywhere, right? Women are paid less than men. Black women are paid less than white women. We keep fighting, right? We keep saying this isn't right. over and over again. I don't
And I
know.
think you ask for what you want and what you
Yeah.
need and what you deserve. And you not only ask for yourself, but you ask for your sisterhood too.
Yeah.
So, whenever I'm advocating for myself, whether it's about payment or covers or access to marketing or whatever, I'm also doing this because I want it to be done for everybody and for anyone who's coming after me, coming alongside me. So I think I the more that we advocate together and band together, we're all having these conversations. Okay, you talk to your publisher, you talk to yours. I think that's how you get it going across the board. So it's not just for me, but it's for us and it's for like an industry wide change. And then again, I think the people who you have in positions of power, hopefully, if that becomes more diverse, then hopefully we'll see more equity. So I think all of those things have to be kind of in concert with each other.
Okay. This one is a little bit for me, but I actually think that we can both answer the second part. So this is from Tori Richardson. Nicola, I'm an engineering major about to graduate from college, and I'm inspired by how you're a writer and a scientist. I love writing, but I've fallen out of the habit. Can you speak on your journey to writing, and if you ever felt too busy to write? And I know that I'm sure you have this too, Renee, like the too busy to write part, right?
Yeah.
Um, the only answer to this is that you have to find the time to write. I mean, that's it. Like, I don't know any other way to put this. Um, because the only way to write is to write. I mean, I absolutely feel very busy all the time, but I also got up at 4 a.m. this morning, right? Because it's hard to do Zoom school with my little girl. It's hard to
Mhm.
find the time to write, but I have to because she does not go to college if I don't write. Mama needs to get paid. So, um, yes, it is hard. And yes, you will feel overwhelmed and all the things, but find the time just a little bit, maybe every day, every other day, every weekend, just be selfish about it. Find a little time, the space for you and for the thing you want to do. You can do it. If I can do it, I swear to you, you can pull it off.
Yeah, when I was working full time, especially, I used to write on my lunch breaks. And so I would eat very quickly, like I had an hour lunch. So I'd eat within 15 minutes and then 45 minutes I would write. And that's how I got all the books up until this side of home were, I wrote all of those books while working full time and writing a little bit here and a little bit there. And sometimes I just set my timer at home. Ellen Hagen, a good friend, author, we will set a timer for 30 minutes and just like, okay, we're gonna write. And you can get a lot done in 30
Yeah.
minutes, especially when this might be the only writing time for the day. Like that flows sometimes more than, oh, I have all day to write. And, so yeah, I think set a timer, carve out time, make it happen. Writers write. So you just got to make it work.
Yeah. When I wrote everything, I wrote that from 4 to 6 a.m. over the course of 3 years because I had a full time job and I had a 3-month-old. And that
Mm.
was the only time that I got to be just Nikki and do the thing I wanted. So it was 4 to 6 a.m.
Wow.
And I love Renee's method. I use this too. I have like an app on my phone that's 30 minutes on, 5 minutes off, 30 minutes on, 5 minutes off, right?
Yeah.
And so you can do anything for 30 minutes,
Right.
right? Like that excludes checking the internet, no Twitter or Instagram, nothing. Just wait. Okay. Uh, let's see. Okay. Love all your books, Renee. And there's so many of them. Talk about how you get ideas for the books and the energy, organization, motivation to consistently produce excellent works. This one is from Patricia Welch.
Uh, I I get inspired by the young people that I know. I worked in public schools for many years as a guest writer in the schools, and so I just was up close and personal with young people, and I've mentored them through certain programs that I worked for in both Portland and New York, and I think I'm drawing a lot on the young people I know, the young person I was. So I'm kind of going back and righting some wrongs and thinking about man, I wish I had a story like this as a kid, or I wish that didn't happen to me as a child. So I'm gonna put it in here and then have a new ending for a situation. So yeah, I'm drawing inspiration from all of the young people in my life. Thank you for the compliment as far as like consistently putting out good work. I read a lot and I'm around writers who inspire me, and I'm always trying to tell another part of our story. So I never want to put out a book that is just like, okay, well, that's what you said in the last book, right? I want to keep pushing myself to see what else do I have to say? What's another way to say that? So yeah, I just want to have a kind of nuanced, diverse within my own body of work. I want my books to be in conversation with each other, but to also be very different and present another type of girl to my reader.
Okay, Ramona Prasad. Thank you both for writing a diverse perspective that isn't wholly about trauma. Teens of color just have regular lives. It's not all racism, trauma, etc. all the time. And there's not a question there, but I think we've had this conversation, Renee. I think we both really appreciate, sort of the depth across the spectrum of what you can write about for people of color. My husband always likes to say, like, people of color don't exist to teach other people a lesson.
Yes,
We just,
amen to that.
I'm going to talk a little bit about Joy Revolution, which is an imprint that I founded with my husband at Random House Children's Books. And the entire mission of this imprint is to publish big, swoony love stories starring people of color, written by people of color, right? Precisely for that reason that everything isn't trauma. Obviously, we live in America and so many things are wrong, right? And there are so many things that need fixing. But I don't wake up every day thinking about the struggle. I cannot, because it's my life and I get to be joyful in it, right? I only have this much time on the planet. And so I want to see all the stories, right? I want to see the story where the girl overcomes racism, or the boy who is coming out makes it out of his sort of tiny, horrible town or whatever. But I also want to see the big, swoony love story where there is kissing and they have the happily ever after. I want to see all of it. I want the full measure of our humanity. And sometimes we don't get that. And I refuse. I'm done. I'm over it. So let's go.
Yeah, I've said this a lot when talking about Love is a Revolution. So I wrote the first draft pre-pandemic, but then all of the revision and fine-tuning happened during not only the pandemic, but really that last summer, with
Right.
the unrest and the protests. And there was this part of me that was like, oh, I'm way off here. Like maybe I shouldn't be writing this book right now because this is not going to be relevant. Our young people are going through so much. They're watching the news. I need to. And then I caught myself like, what am I saying? Like, love is relevant. And love is happening. Love is real. And like you said, our young people are also waking up, still making playlists and
Yes.
flirting with each other and doing TikTok and all these. They're being teenagers in the midst of all that's going on. And so I want to make sure that my story, and sometimes I am going there in my stories. I have stories that are explicitly about the like intersections of race, class, and gender. But the thing is, that's not what makes it a Black story. It's a Black story because I'm writing it and because my characters are Black. And I think the problem in publishing is that Black equals struggle. So sometimes if there's not that struggle moment, or that I just taught a white person something moment, it won't resonate, or it feels like, oh, this doesn't feel as authentic. And I'm like, well, that's just because you're used to seeing us in a way that's helping you learn something, or that's talking about race. But there's nothing going on in Love is a Revolution that is like that kind of the struggle, the Black struggle, but it's a very Black book. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I
And
know.
Black culture is on the page. And so, yeah, I think it's important. And that's why I love your work. And I think all stories matter. And this is not to say, and this is another thing in publishing, we go from one thing to the extremes, right? So we're not saying that those other stories shouldn't be told. They absolutely should. And
And they
horror stories and mysteries and
yeah.
fantasy and all the things need to be told, because we deserve to be on the page in many, many, many many ways.
Yes. All right. So it's 6, but I feel like we should, maybe you want to do one more, Renee?
Sure, we can do one more.
Yeah. Okay, here's one. Miss Watson, is there any update on the Langston Hughes Brownstone and that arts organization?
So we closed at the end of
Right.
2019. We're no longer in that space. We have ended the nonprofit proper, but we have established a scholarship program with the Highlights Foundation, and you can check their website. They have all the information on there, where we are still supporting Black women, authors, writers, makers, and hopefully when we're back in person, we will have annual retreats at the Highlights Farm that will bring together writers of color. So we are going to be working on some things in the future, but we kind of had to put things on hold once COVID happened.
Okay, and I'm going to end with this lovely comment from Megan, who says, I just wanted to let you know that I love this book. She's talking about Love is a Revolution. I'll be introducing it to my students in North Texas tomorrow.
Oh, thank you. North Texas. I will
Yeah.
see y'all soon for the North Texas Teen Book Fest. That's
Right.
happening this weekend.
All right, you guys.
Thank you, Nicola, so much for talking with me. It's been a joy and a pleasure.
I've been looking forward to this for so long, Renee. So I'm really, really thrilled that we got to do it. And I love your book. Let me show you your book again.
Yes, thank you. Where's yours? I put it somewhere. Here we go.
It's beautiful inside and out. Get it?
Thank you both so much for coming. It was wonderful. And thank you everyone out there for joining us. Please do consider purchasing a copy of Renee's book and Nicola's book and her upcoming book online at powells.com. We are recording this, so it will be on YouTube later this week if you'd like to rewatch it or share it. Until then, just have a wonderful evening.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone. Bye.